If you're old enough, you remember exactly where you sat. The couch. The Thursday night. The family that felt like your own. For 8 years, they were the warmest house on television. And then we lost all of it at once. Not just the show. The feeling of being allowed to love it. If that show was part of your home growing up, subscribe. What these actors carried afterward deserves to be remembered. Because behind that family were 10 real people. Most are still here. 2 of them have left us. And one held the other's hand at the very end. They gave us something that mattered. And then the man who stood at the head of that table gave the world a reason to look away. The father we trusted most became the name no one could say we. This is the story of the 9 who kept going. And the one who broke everything they built. We're counting all 10 down. The smallest part of the family first. The heart of it last. And we start with the daughter who was just a girl when the cameras found her. Number 10. Start at the edge of the family. The 4th child. The one who stayed on the phone too long and tried to grow up faster than her parents would allow. Now picture a college lecture hall, early 1990s. Rows of students. A professor at the front. And somewhere in the middle, taking notes on corporate finance, a young woman every person in that room would have recognized on sight. If a single one of them had looked up, they didn't. That was the WH whole point. That's Tempestt at Bledsoe. To the country, she was Vanessa Huxtable. To New York University, she was just another student earning a finance degree, which she finished in 1994, 2 years after the cameras shut off. Here's what surprises people. While some of her castmates spent the next 30 years stepping carefully around the show, Bledsoe never did. She talked about it. She defended what it meant. A woman once told her she watches the reruns with her grandchildren. And Bledsoe said that's the part that still feels good. Most child stars run. She stayed. 52 now, still with the same partner she fell for on the set of the show's own spin-off. Over 30 years. Never married, never needing to explain why. The Huxtable who grew up closest to home. The next person wasn't part of the original family at all. She walked in late, a cousin nobody was expecting, and left to become one of the most quoted women on 90s television. By the time she walked onto that soundstage, the Huxtables had already been famous for 6 years. Sit with that. You're young, you're talented, and your first real day at work is on the most watched set in the country. Joining a family the whole nation already loves. Most actors would shrink. Erika Alexander did the opposite. She played Pam, the cousin who moves in when her mother heads west. The city kid who doesn't fit at first and slowly becomes one of them. It was a good role. It was not the one that made her a legend. That came next. Maxine Shaw, attorney at law. The fast-talking, fiercely independent heart of the 90s sitcom Living Single. A performance sharp enough to win her 2 NAA, CP Image Awards, and one people still quote today. But here's the turn you don't see coming. Alexander didn't just keep acting. She sat down in a dark screening room at a major film festival in 2022. Back row, arms folded, and watched her own documentary unspool for the first time. She'd co-directed it, a film about reparations that she and her company had spent years building. The woman who'd once been the new girl on someone else's set was now running the room. She is 56 and still adding titles. Filmmaker, activist, producer. She took the platform that family handed her and aimed it somewhere it was always supposed to go. Keep her in mind, because she isn't the only one in this countdown who turned a humiliation into something larger. One of the men still ahead was photographed doing the most ordinary job in the world. And what he did next changed the conversation entirely. We'll get there. First, we have to slow down. The next face in this family is one of the 2 we lost. And the way she left is the most tender, most devastating story in the whole show. On screen, she was Theo's girlfriend. Bright, funny, impossible not to like. Off screen, it was real. The 2 of them were together for years. Her name was Michelle Thomas. If the face also brings back a second show, that's right. She went on to play Myra, the girl who adored Steve Urkel on Family Matters, long before Urkel ever deserved it. And here's something almost nobody remembers. Her father helped build one of the great American bands. Dennis Thomas was a founding member of Kool and the Gang. Every wedding song you've ever danced to, that was her family. In 1997, Michelle was diagnosed with a rare cancer. She kept working as long as her body let her. And just before Christmas, in 1998, she left us. She was 30 years old. She wasn't alone. At her bedside was the young man the country knew as Theo. Malcolm-Jamal Warner, who had been her boyfriend and had remained her closest friend for real. The two of them had a private language. 2 words they'd say instead of the 3 that were harder to mean out loud. On the lips, the 2 words looked almost exactly like, "I love you." He leaned in. He said them. She smiled and said them back. Elephant juice. Remember that, young man. We are coming back to him. Because the cruelest part of this story is not the part you just heard. For now, we go to the smallest member of the family. A girl so young she once asked how she could possibly fit inside a television. She was 5 years old, and she kept staring at the wrong thing. The director was trying to read her for the part. But the little girl's eyes kept drifting to a monitor in the corner of the room. Finally, he asked her what she was looking at. She pointed at the screen and asked the only question that mattered to a 5-year-old. "How can you make me on the TV?" That was Keshia Knight Pulliam. They made her on the TV, all right. As Rudy, the baby of the house, the one who landed the biggest laughs with the smallest face. And she made history doing it. At 6 years old, Keshia became the youngest person ever nominated for a Primetime Emmy in her category. SX. She'd barely learned to read, and the industry was already handing her its highest honor. She's 47 now, and her life looks nothing like Hollywood. She raised her children on a farm outside Atlanta. She became a founding partner of an investment fund built to back women of color, putting money behind exactly the people the industry tends to overlook. The baby of the Huxtable house grew up to write checks for other people's dreams, which brings us to the woman who played her mother. The one America decided was the perfect mum. The trouble with being called perfect is what happens when the world stops believing it. America handed her a title she never asked for, the perfect mother. For 8 years, Phylicia Rashad was Clair Huxtable. A lawyer, a wife, a mother of 5 who could silence a room with one lifted eyebrow. A generation of women saw themselves in her. A generation of kids wished she were theirs. But the role of her life wasn't on television at all. It was on a stage. 2004. A Broadway theater. The revival of A Raisin in the Sun. When they read her name as the winner, Phylicia Rashad became the first black woman ever to win the Tony Award for Best Actress in a Play. The mother from the sitcom had just made history in the most punishing arena her craft has. She won a second Tony years later. She ran a university's College of Fine Arts. At 78, she still directs. She staged the play that won Broadway's top honor just last year. Her bond with the show's creator was real and long-standing. In 2021, when his conviction was overturned on legal grounds, she posted a message celebrating it. It drew heavy criticism, and she apologized soon after, telling students her words were never meant to dismiss survivors of assault. We say that plainly, and we move on, because her story is far larger than one bad day online. And now we have to keep a promise. Earlier, we left a young man at a hospital bedside in 1998. It's time to go back to him. The young man at that bedside was Malcolm-Jamal Warner. To everyone watching at home, he was Theo. The only Huxtable son, the kid who stumbled and grew and made his TV father proud. The role earned him an Emmy nomination while he was still a teenager. But the boy you watched grow up did far more than act. Picture a recording studio, decades later. A man with a bass guitar, leaning into a groove. That's Theo. Warner taught himself the instrument as an adult and got good enough to win a Grammy. He wrote poetry. He launched a podcast about mental health in the black community. He spent his life trying to turn a famous name into something that meant something. And he was the one willing to say the hard thing out loud. When the allegations against the show's creator surfaced, Warner didn't dodge them. He said he was saddened that the legacy he was so proud of had been tarnished. He loved what that family stood for. He refused to pretend the man at its head hadn't broken it. Here is the cruelest part, the one I told you was coming. In July of 2025, Malcolm-Jamal Warner went into the ocean off the coast of Costa Rica on vacation with his family. A current caught him. He didn't come back. He was 54 years old. Now hold those two names together. The young man who sat beside Michelle Thomas in 1998, who whispered their private word and watched her smile one last time, has now left us too. 2 of the youngest faces in that family. Both gone. He was at peace, his mother said. He did not suffer. If one of these 2 names was part of your living room growing up, type it once in the comments. Not for the algorithm. Just so it's said out loud somewhere tonight. Here is a sentence no casting director would believe. A 3-year-old, too young to read, carried scenes opposite one of the most experienced performers in the country. and one. That was Raven-Symoné. She joined as Olivia, the tiny stepdaughter who arrived in the show's later years. Somebody had to feed her the lines one word at a time, and she'd say them back, and somehow it worked. And of everyone in this family, she may have built the biggest solo career. A toddler from that set became the lead of one of Disney Channel's most successful shows ever. That's So Raven. A hit big enough to launch a spin-off, she went on to produce herself. She co-hosted The View. She made records. She has been famous, without a single real gap, for almost her entire life. 40 years old, married since 2020, still booking new roles decades after a grown-up had to whisper her very first lines into her ear. 3 faces left. And this is where the whole story turns. The next man was photographed doing something so ordinary that the internet tried to shame him for it. And his response became one of the most powerful moments any of these actors ever had. After him, the woman who walked away from all of this at the peak of her fame. And then, finally, the man whose name a country tried to erase. 2018. A grocery store in New Jersey. A customer in the checkout line lifts a phone and snaps a photo of the man bagging her groceries. By morning, it's a headline on 2 continents. A Cosby Show actor working at Trader Joe's. And the internet does the ugly thing the internet does. It laughs. That man was Geoffrey Owens. On the show, he was Alvin, the earnest young doctor who married the oldest Huxtable daughter. In real life, he is the son of a United States congressman, a Yale graduate who finished with honors, a Shakespeare teacher who founded his own theater company. None of that was in the headline. The headline just wanted him to be a punchline. Here's what he did. He'd been working that job for over a year because it gave him steady income and the freedom to keep auditioning. The ordinary math of a working actor nobody warns you about. And when the shaming came, he didn't hide. He went on morning television, sat up straight, and said the thing out loud. There is no job that's beneath dignity. No work to be ashamed of when the work is real. And the world turned around all at once. Actors defended him. A famous director offered him a role on the spot. Another star sent him money, and Owens gave every dollar of it to charity. That's the answer to the question we opened way back near the start. What do you do when the world tries to shame you for doing your job? You stand up. You keep teaching. You keep going. 65 now, still acting, still on television. The man they tried to make small made himself impossible to look down on. 2 faces left. And they could not be more different. We just watched one man refuse to disappear. The next person chose to vanish. At the exact moment everyone wanted more of her. Imagine walking away from the #1 show in America. At its peak. On purpose. That's the legend of Lisa Bonet. She was Denise, the dreamy, bohemian second daughter, the one teenage girl studied like a style Bible. The role earned her an Emmy nomination and her own spin-off, and she could not wait to get out of it. She wanted darker, stranger, riskier parts than a family sitcom would ever allow. So she took them, a notorious horror film that scandalized the very fans who'd grown up on Denise. She left the show in 1991. She even traded her own name for a new one. And then she did the rarest thing a famous person can do. She disappeared. No reinvention tour, no comeback narrative. Just a private life, mostly out of frame, for decades. But the story didn't stop with her. The little girl she was raising in all that silence grew up to be Zoe Kravitz, one of the defining stars of a whole new generation. The mother stepped out of the spotlight. The daughter stepped right into it. She is 58, and she remains one of the most private people her industry has ever produced. She showed us you can be adored by millions and still decide, completely, that the spotlight is not where you want to live. And that brings us to the last face. #1. The one this whole story has been circling from the very first second. A woman just chose to vanish from the world's attention. The man we turn to now is the opposite. The world tried to erase him, and couldn't. Start with a kid in North Philadelphia, 1940s. Poor, restless, not much money in the house, and a talent he figures out early. He can make a room laugh. For a boy with nothing, that laugh is a kind of power. That boy was Bill Cosby, and the power was real. He turned it into a career nobody had managed before him, a black entertainer who broke into rooms that had been locked shut. Then he built the thing he'd be remembered for. A father in a sweater. A house full of love. A family that made tens of millions of homes feel, for 8 years, like everything might just be okay. America gave him a title for it. America's dad, the most trusted father in the nation. Born July 12, 1937, Bill Cosby is 88 years old today, and the word today carries everything because of what we now know. More than 60 women have accused him of sexual assault. He was convicted in 2018, and 3 years later, that conviction was overturned. Not because a court declared him innocent. On a legal technicality tied to an old promise from a prosecutor, he cannot be tried on those charges again. He walked free. But the verdicts kept coming in civil court, where the rules are different. Juries have found him liable for assault. Most recently, in March of this year, for something dating all the way back to 1972. Through all of it, he has denied everything. And the house came down. 97 universities took back their honors. The networks pulled the show. The family millions of us loved was suddenly something you weren't supposed to watch. So, can a masterpiece survive the man who made it? Here's the honest answer. The masterpiece never lived in him. It lived in the 9 people you just met. In a Grammy-winning bass line. In a man standing tall at a grocery store checkout. In a mother making Broadway history. In 2 young faces gone too soon. The father at the head of that table is the one thing that fell. Everyone else carried what it meant out the door with them. The house still stands. Just not because of him. Before we close, 2 names that deserve to be said one more time. Michelle Thomas, 30 years old. A laugh that filled every room she walked into, and a grace at the end that the rest of us can only hope to find. Malcolm-Jamal Warner, 54. The boy who became the conscience of this whole cast, who loved what this show meant enough to say the truth about what happened to it. Whatever becomes of the name at the top of this list, nothing touches theirs. So here's where we land. You can't unknow what we know now. And you probably can't sit down and watch that show the way you did when you were young. That door is closed, and the man who closed it deserves the closing. But the people are a different story. The matriarch making history on Broadway. The baby of the house funding other people's dreams. The cousin behind a camera now. The man who refused to be shamed for doing his job. They didn't just survive him. They juggered him. If one of them was part of your growing up, Rudy, Theo, Denise, Vanessa, any of them, tell me in the comments which one and what they meant to you. Not the man at the top, the ones who earned it. We've got more of these stories coming about the casts you grew up with and where life took them. If you want to keep finding them, you know where the button is. Take care of each other.